I just returned home from a trip to Napa Valley. While I was there, I had the opportunity to taste more than 1,000 different wines. So in this video, I'm going to reveal 8 of my favorites. We're going to start out with one of the very best values in all of Napa Valley. I know many of my viewers complain that they think that there's no value to be had in Napa Valley, but this wine shatters that myth. This is a wine that comes from one of the very best winemakers in all of Napa Valley. It's also sourced from estate fruit from a single vineyard in a prestigious area. Yet this wine sells for only $78 per bottle from the very strong 2021 vintage. So the first top Napa Valley wine that I'm buying is the 2021 Blankiet Estate Prince of Music. This is a wine that was originally made for Total Wine, but since then it's expanded and now they sell winery direct as well as through some other channels as well. This is a wine that's made by Graham McDonald, one of the McDonald brothers that produces the highly coveted McDonald Cabernet Sauvignon. Graham has rapidly become one of the top winemakers in all of Napa Valley, and he does an excellent job with the entire Blankiet Estate lineup. This is a wine that's mostly Cabernet Sauvignon, but also includes some Cabernet Franc, Petit Verdot, and some Merlot. I had the chance to taste this wine last week, and it was extremely impressive. This is a wine that punches well above its weight at this price point. Better still, it's a wine that doesn't need any additional aging, although it will certainly age for another 6 to 8 years with no problem whatsoever. This is a wine that features flavors and aromas of blackcurrant, cherry, iron, mixed spice, and tobacco. It's medium plus in body with a plush mouthfeel and velvety tannins. Really an impressive wine at this price point. The next Napa Valley wine that I'm buying comes from Howell Mountain. Dunn Vineyards is one of the pioneers on Howell Mountain. Randy Dunn started Dunn Vineyards way back in 1979, at the same time that he was the winemaker for Caymus. While Randy is still certainly very much involved with Dunn Vineyards, Randy's son Mike has worked for the winery for many years as well and is now in charge of winemaking. Significantly, the Dunn wines are still very much made in the same classic Napa Valley style as when Randy was in charge of winemaking, but Mike made an important change to the oak barrel maturation program that has resulted in the wines being a little bit more approachable at an earlier age. Dunn actually makes 2 different wines that I'll be discussing in this video, the first of which is the classic Dunn Howell Mountain Cabernet Sauvignon, and the second of which is the Dunn Napa Valley Cabernet Sauvignon. I'll discuss each of these wines in turn. Last week I had the chance to visit Dunn again, and I sat down for a proper tasting and tried numerous different vintages of the Dunn Howell Mountain Cabernet Sauvignon. As with the last visit, I was greeted by an extremely friendly dog who must have remembered me, as he was definitely even more friendly this year than the last time I visited. The Dunn Howell Mountain Cabernet Sauvignon comes exclusively from Dunn's estate-grown fruit on Howell Mountain. This wine is always 100% Cabernet Sauvignon, and both of the Dunn wines mature for an impressive 32 months in 100% new French oak, and then spend another year in bottle before they're released. The wines also have less than 14% alcohol, typically 13.9% alcohol by volume, and there's various winemaking techniques that are implemented by the Dunns to ensure that this 14% threshold is not exceeded. I've previously recommended the outstanding 2019 Dunn Howell Mountain on this channel. Last week during my visit, I was able to taste that wine again, and it's still a wine that I highly recommend. So if that's not one that you've picked up and added to your collection yet, you definitely want to consider that one as well. The 2019 vintage is still the current release of the Dunn Howell Mountain Cabernet Sauvignon and will be for a few more weeks until they release the 2021 vintage. They were not able to produce a 2020 vintage due to the fires and the smoke damage on Howell Mountain, but fortunately I was able to get a sneak preview of the 2021 vintage, and that one is also an outstanding effort. 2021 was a fantastic vintage for Napa Valley generally, and the Dunn certainly crushed it in 2021. The 2021 Dunn Howell Mountain features flavors and aromas of blackberry, plum, licorice, menthol, and mixed spice. While this is definitely a powerful wine, the tannins were refined and there's ample acidity and freshness. This is a wine that will certainly cruise in your cellar for decades, but you don't have to wait that long to enjoy it. In fact, I also tasted the 2013 and 2015 vintages of Dunn Mountain when I was there, and both of those vintages were showing well already. The family also advised that they tend to enjoy the Dunn Mountain release between 10 and 15 years after the vintage. So certainly much more approachable at an earlier age than they were historically. While the 2021 Dunn Mountain has not been released yet, it's my understanding that that wine will sell for close to $200 or so. And you should be able to get any of these wines that I'm discussing regarding Dunn from the winery directly, or they should be available in retail channels as well. Dunn also makes a second wine called the Napa Valley Cabernet Sauvignon that sells for around $120 per bottle. This wine is made in much the same way as the Howell Mountain bottling, except that about half the fruit comes from the valley floor and the other half comes from Howell Mountain. As such, this wine is much more approachable and capable of being enjoyed at a younger age than the Howell Mountain bottling. I tried the 2021 vintage of the Dunn Napa Valley Cabernet Sauvignon last week, and it was already extremely enjoyable. This is a wine that you need not age at all, but it will certainly cruise in your cellar for a decade or more as well. During my last visit to the winery a couple years ago, I tried the 2013 vintage, and it was still showing extremely well with no signs of fading. I know that many of you are also interested in visiting a number of the producers that I visit during my wine travels, so I asked Dunn about whether or not they're open for visitors, and they assured me that they were. So if you're interested in visiting Dunn Vineyards on Howell Mountain, definitely reach out to them and schedule a visit for your next trip to Napa Valley. The next Napa Valley wines that I'm buying now come from a fairly small producer who started not long ago. Their vineyard was planted just in 2011, but they're already making some exceptional wines. To give you some context, I was at a Premiere Napa Valley event that was hosted at Arkenstone, and I'd already tasted about 150 wines or so at that event. Towards the end, I met Sam Copland, who's the winemaker for Arkenstone, and he was tasting me through not only the Arkenstone wines, but also some other wines that he produces for other wineries. In general, I tend to enjoy a number of the wines that Sam makes because they tend to be a little bit more elegant and they're characterized by finesse rather than just power and intensity. But even with respect to those wineries for which Sam was the winemaker, there was one particular producer whose wine stood out from the rest and really resonated with me. They really had my attention when they started out by giving me a Marsanne. Of course, Marsanne is typically a white wine that you'll find in the Rhone region of France, and it's something that's certainly not very common at all in Napa Valley. This wine really had impressive purity of fruit, and it was extremely enjoyable. The wine did not really have any of that waxy or oily quality that you can sometimes get with Rhone whites, and even two friends that I was tasting with and who really dislike Rhone whites generally really enjoyed this wine. But things got even more serious when I tried a terrific trio of Napa Valley Cabernet Sauvignon from this producer from the tremendous 2021 vintage, namely a Block D, a Block B, and an Estate Cabernet Sauvignon. After you taste a large number of Napa Valley Cabernet Sauvignons in one day, they tend to run together a little bit, but this trio really distinguished themselves with their elegance and their freshness. They also had a much stronger mid-palate than is customary, and there were layers and layers of flavor. The flavors and aromas included mixed red and black fruit, whetstone, lead pencil, tobacco, and mixed spice. As soon as I tasted these cabs, I immediately started asking questions about the vineyard source, and I found out that this vineyard was just planted about 14 or 15 years ago, and the vines are still fairly youthful. But they're located in a very special area in the Vaca Mountains. They're located at a fairly high elevation between Pritchard Hill, Oakville, and Atlas Peak. This vineyard is in a prestigious area as it overlooks famous producers such as Continuum and even Screaming Eagle, the famous cult producer whose wines sell for several $1,000s per bottle. The soils for this vineyard are gravel and volcanic soils that are ideal for the production of high-quality Cabernet Sauvignon. The Cabernet Sauvignons from this producer mature for around 32 months in oak before they're bottled, and then they undergo some additional bottle aging before they're released. So the current release is still the 2019 vintage, and they have not yet released the 2021 vintage that I tasted last week. I was a little bit torn about whether or not to include this producer in this video because it is a fairly small producer. However, I checked their website and saw that their mailing list is still open. In addition, it looks like there are some retailers that will be carrying the 2021 vintage when it is released. It also looks like Vangone still has some of that Marsanne available on its website as well. So if you're interested in trying some of these wines, you can sign up for their mailing list like I did just this week. And while it's still open currently, I expect that there may be a waiting list in the near future as word starts to spread and people start to realize what exceptional wines these are. If you're interested in wine recommendations, wine collecting strategies, and learning more about wine, please do subscribe to my channel. I've been collecting wine for more than 15 years and also have a level 4 diploma from the WSET. So I have both formal certification as well as substantial practical knowledge from the School of Hard Knocks. Kenward established Tor Wines back in 2001, following a successful 27-year career at Beringer that even included a meteoric 2-year rise from media tour guide to vice president. Tor's approach to winemaking is to produce wines not just from the very best vineyards in Napa Valley, but from the best parcels in the best vineyards in Napa Valley. Tor then lets the purity of the fruit shine through. This is accomplished through non-interventionist winemaking. Among other things, they use native yeast for fermentation, they use restraint when using new French oak for maturation, and they don't fine or filter their wines. They're extremely meticulous in every aspect of winemaking, however, and they even select different oak barrels for the wine for every particular vineyard because they believe that a tailored cooperage strategy produces the best wines. Tor certainly makes a number of outstanding wines that I enjoy. He's perhaps most famous for making the wines that are called Pure Magic and Black Magic. Black Magic was the wine that golfer Phil Mickelson drank directly from his trophy to celebrate winning the PGA Championship in 2021. But in this video, there's 2 different wines that I'll be discussing that I tried last week, which really stood out among some pretty fierce competition. The 2021 Tor Kenward Vine Hill Ranch Cabernet Sauvignon was an absolute showstopper. This wine distinguished itself from some fierce competition that included not only some of the very best wines in Oakville, but some of the very best names in Napa Valley generally. But yet this wine featured impressive layered flavors of blue and black fruit, violets, licorice, lead pencil, and much more. This wine had plush velvety tannins, impressive purity of fruit, and a long complex finish. Really an impressive wine. It sells for between $220 and $270 per bottle, so definitely shop around for it. To be sure, this wine is not inexpensive, but it absolutely outshined a number of wines that sell for between $500 or $1,000 per bottle, or even more than that. But there's another Tor Kenward wine that I tried at this tasting that's perhaps the best value in Tor's lineup, namely the 2021 Vaca Ridge. This is a wine that you can probably find for between $120 and $150 per bottle. This is a wine that comes from the east side of Oakville, where it tends to be a little bit warmer, and so this wine will have a little bit more of a red fruit profile. This is a Cabernet Sauvignon dominant wine, but it also has a substantial percentage of Cabernet Franc, which helps to give it a little bit of aromatic lift and freshness. Staglin is a family-owned winery that has vineyards located in a prestigious area of the Rutherford Bench. Its neighbors include Scarecrow, Inglenook, and Bella Oaks. Staglin's vineyards are located on the west side of Rutherford, so these vineyards benefit from shade from the hillsides during the hottest part of the day, which helps to extend the growing season and preserve acidity and freshness in the fruit. One of my absolute favorite wines last week, regardless of price, was the 2021 Staglin Napa Valley Cabernet Sauvignon. This is a full-bodied wine that has abundant structure, but it also has rich, opulent fruit that balance that structure. There was layers of flavor and some impressive freshness and elegance. The finish was long and complex. Really a special wine and an absolute standout last week. After I got back, I discovered that Jeb Dunn gave this wine a perfect 100-point score, and I certainly don't disagree with that rating. This is a wine that sells for around $325 per bottle. You should be able to find it from some retail sources if you do a search online, and you may also be able to get it directly from the winery if you reach out to them. While this wine was extremely impressive last week, it's definitely a wine that deserves some additional bottle time. It will be much better in 4 to 5 years, and it will cruise in your cellar for 3 decades or more. Really a special wine, and one that would be a valuable piece of any collection. After all those red wines, you'll definitely want a palate cleanser, and this next wine from Napa Valley is an excellent choice. Idyllically located in the wild mountainous terrain of southeastern Napa Valley, Kenzo Estate is a fusion of precision, ambition, and natural beauty. Kenzo Estate spans a remarkable 3,800 acres, yet only 4% of its property is planted to vine. These vineyards are farmed meticulously by world-class viticulturist David Abreu. These meticulously farmed vineyards are characterized by high elevation, volcanic soils, and cool marine breezes. The result is wines of finesse, elegance, and character. While Cabernet is king in Napa Valley, there's also a large amount of high-quality Sauvignon Blanc being produced. In general, there's 2 different styles of Sauvignon Blanc that comes from Napa Valley. The first is a fruit-forward, more refreshing style that typically sells between $30 and $50 per bottle, depending on the producer. This is a crisp, refreshing style of Sauvignon Blanc that makes an ideal porch pounder and is perfect for the summer. But there's also a second type of Sauvignon Blanc. This is more like a Bordeaux Blanc, so it's oftentimes blended with Semillon, and it can oftentimes experience some oak maturation. For this style, the emphasis is very much on complexity, and just as in Bordeaux, you can have some extremely impressive wines, but also some wines that tend to be very costly in terms of their price. I tried a number of outstanding expressions of Sauvignon Blanc from Napa Valley last week, but one that I think offers a great blend between complexity and price point is the Kenzo Estate Asatsuyu. While I was at the winery, I tried the 2023 vintage, which is a blend that consists of 91% Sauvignon Blanc and 9% Semillon. This wine matured for around 6 months before it was bottled. Half of the fruit was matured in stainless steel, and the other half in oak. This wine was elegant and complex, but also had refreshing acidity. It featured flavors and aromas of lychee, lemon zest, peach, apple, and pineapple. It's a wine that you want to enjoy right away and that you don't need to save. Napa Valley is one of my very favorite places to visit, and I go each and every year. If you'd like to know my thoughts concerning some of the best wineries to visit while you're in Napa Valley, please be sure to check out this video that's linked above.